The following program is brought to you by Naleo TV, the People's Platform.
We welcome you here today, and we respect the Aina and its people as we discuss an important issue today, and that is immigration in Hawaii, and especially how it impacts Hawai'i County. We have a panel of local experts here and leaders that I will introduce you.
My name is Janae Capella. I have the privilege of representing my hometown in South Kona, Captain Cook area. District 5, which runs from South Kona all the way to Keau Shipman Park. It's the largest district in the state. It also encompasses many of our iconic Kona and Ka'u coffee farms. So I've been working with Aloha Latinos for many months now, dealing with the hardship that I think our local families in District 5, in Hononau, all the way through to Ka'u are dealing with, along with people across our state. Secondly, I want to commend the League of Women Voters for putting this together, and I want to thank all of you. There are a lot of different things, I think, when it comes to immigration that we need to be talking about. I think first and foremost, one of the things that I'm hoping that will come up in this discussion today is, while we knew this was going to happen during a second Trump administration, we were nowhere near prepared. So I'm hoping that the things that we will discuss today are preparations for how you folks can get involved, and also the next steps to being able to have, what is our emergency plan? Because as we've dealt with these issues, as we've seen our community members, as we've seen students, as we've seen teachers struggle to keep their classrooms in order, to keep their families safe, we know that there's really not a plan. The state hasn't had a plan. So we're slowly starting to educate legislators. We're slowly starting to educate even, I hate to say it, but our Attorney General's office, who up until earlier this year didn't even have an immigration specialist on the Attorney General's team. So I think there are a lot of gaps, and unfortunately, Hawai'i County has experienced the brunt of those gaps because we really were the first community that's targeted. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation. I thank you all for being here, and we have a lot of work to do over the next 3 years and beyond, because we can't just look at what's happening right now. We can't just be afraid of the chaos. We have to envision the Hawaii and the America that we want to see, and that's a Hawaii and an America that benefits and supports all people to thrive, regardless of their documentation status.
Have to follow that one.
If anyone could do it, Rebecca can.
Aloha, my name's Rebecca Villegas, and I'm the Hawai'i County Council representative for District 7, which is predominantly Kailua Kona and stretches into a bit of South Kona. Wow. In my time of service, began under the Trump first administration, and now the second administration. Humbly admit, it's daily kind of like a dystopian nightmare. Can't even imagine unless I look at history. And history repeats itself. And unfortunately, we, even I myself, have assumed that the rights and the privileges and the righteousness in some of the laws that we have been able to evolve into in this country are now under attack, vulnerable, and being compromised. Direct violations of the Constitution, not to mention just the essence, the ethos, and the core, kuleana, of our community here in Hawaii as a melting pot, a hub of diversity and people of different ethnicities. Ironically, my own great-great-great-grandparents immigrated to Hawaii from Germany to escape what was happening there. So I take it as a profound responsibility, privilege, and opportunity to continue to try and navigate our way to solutions. Also, the opportunity to cut through the questions of, why would somebody do this? That's not even relevant when you're dealing with an administration that is not abiding by the law, the Constitution, protocols, principles of decency and humanity. And so the challenge is those of us in this room abide by those principles. So it seems baffling to try to find a way to navigate, keep the high road, cause good trouble. But first and foremost, protect the people in our community who are being predated upon and victimized by unconstitutional policies funded by absolutely mind-boggling displacement of funding. And I'm so grateful to see so many brilliant minds in our legal community here. I myself am not a lawyer. I'm a public servant, an advocate, an activist. And so I look forward to the insights for those that have that legal brilliance, and continue to commit myself as a voice, because I do have the opportunity to sit in this role, to speak out, to lean in, to stand side by side, and to ensure that my great-great-grandchildren can be proud of the things I say and do and who I stand beside to support, protect, and represent in our community. I yield.
Good morning. My name is Armando Rodriguez. I'm a president of Aloha Latinos and a Kona coffee farmer. And I'm an immigrant myself. I came over, I crossed the desert, when I was 8 years old. And from there, I've been dealing with immigration. From there on, it's been over 40 years. It's kind of like a abusive relationship, being trying to be an American. I've been, I haven't caused any trouble. I served in the military. I'm a veteran, and after being a veteran, I was arrested. I used to live in Arizona and been arrested, a couple of times. And but we try to, live our life. We're grateful to be here in America. America is a good country. Even though we have a lot of problems, but I strongly feel that we're gonna work them out. We just have a couple of guys that aren't happy with themselves, and they try to share it. But I'm grateful for our politicians here that they've been real supportive, and I'm grateful for all of you, and all the volunteers that have been helping Aloha Latinos. And we don't have all the answers, what to do. It's just kind of we take it day by day. But like I was telling somebody right now, we immigrants, we learn to live our life, because I tell, some of our immigrant community here, I.C.E is coming, and, they just go on with their lives, and, whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen. And, we try to, we just have to learn to live on. And, but, I have a wish list. I wish that, some of our council people, we would take some of the MOUs between Hawaii Police and I.C.E away, because there's been a lot of, been some abuse, that, I know the Hawaii Police is not enforcing immigration laws, but, it's like my grandfather used to say, that it's the same sin if I stab the cow or if I hold his feet, and that's what Hawaii Police is, they're holding our feet while, ICE arrests us. So, I like to see that. And Victoria wanted to, speak, because she's part of our group.
Hi, everyone. My name's Victoria. A lot of you guys know me, and it's really comforting to see a bunch of familiar faces now. I was raised here in Hawaii from a very young age. Went to Kanawaina, and I had undocumented parents growing up. And so my father is the very, very high-profile case here in Kona. He was deported during the first Trump administration in 2017. It was very devastating for myself and my family. and we're here today. 8 years trying to continue to stand with the communities today, right? Because we have lost some, and we have seen how impactful the raids have been here, and how quick people are to go underground and to stop living their lives as normal as well. As Armando said, we do continue to try and have the resistance and the joy, but it is very terrifying for a lot of people, a lot of children at schools, a lot of parents picking up their children, going to work, and it's hard. It's been a subject that hasn't been talked about. It hasn't been discussed because of its nature, because we seek to protect the status of people who don't have it, and protect them as much as possible. But we are at a time where we do have to have these discussions. And so I believe Aloha Latinos, or myself, am open to answering certain questions and explaining kind of the nature of how this happened. But we do have to look at it from like the standpoint of a country and how they have been neglected. These communities, they know what happens. Migration is human nature. And so we have a faulty immigration system, and it's not an accident that this happens. So I really want to thank you for standing with vulnerable communities and protecting their dignity. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Compared to what you've just heard, I'm really a tiny player in this picture. But the point I think that I'd like to make today with you is that the power in this room are you. You are the ones that can really help us change what's going on. And I'm so grateful that you would show up today. But this is only a first step. And so as we talk today, I'd like to be inviting you to be more actively involved. I think many of you already are and have shown up at our rallies and have shown up at County Planning Commission and council meetings, but we need you at these commission meetings and council meetings and on the street and talking to your legislators. I'm amazed. I'm with a group called North Hawai'i Action Network. I'm just a community member. North Hawai'i Action Network is part of Indivisible Hawaii, which is a statewide network that really started right after Trump was elected the first time. The North Hawai'i Action Network has been active since then. There's actually 12 chapters of us across the state, all of whom are actively engaged in a range of activities, but clearly immigration and ICE is the number one issue for all of us. We don't believe that our legislators are as informed. I might go further than that, but to be polite and friendly, they're not as informed as maybe they could be. I'm really grateful that you're here, Janai, and that you actually were able to also invite the Latinos representatives today, because that makes a huge difference to have your voices present, to really hear what's happening on the ground. The damage is appalling. I don't even know what to say. These are not ordinary times. And we, as a group, the community group that I'm involved in, which is the Indivisible group, we're all about protecting Hawaii and democracy. And that's really aligned with what you do with League of Women Voters. And you know, League of Women Voters is one of the really proactive groups when it comes to civil rights, voting rights. Those are all at risk. Now's the time to use your voices. I'm amazed at how many times people will start talking to me now about immigration, that it really is on the public radar. And I think a lot of that has to do with what's happening here, but also what we're seeing on the national news, that it's pretty awful stuff that's happening. But I still feel like we have an awful lot of family and friends who don't know what's going on, and people who I think are really bright, educated, capable individuals will tell me things like, what are you wasting your time? You're wasting your time. They don't actually see that people on the street make a difference. They do. But it really takes persistence and consistency. And so we really ask you to please continue to come out, or come out if you haven't been. I'm thrilled when we've had a couple of our public protests when people come up and they'll be telling me that they've never in their life gone out and protested. They've never sign waved. I kind of wonder what rock they live under. But we got to get all of our friends and family out from under the rocks. And sometimes the people that are standing side by side with us aren't people that are normally folks that I would hang around with. But we actually have to try to be, I think Senator Schatz said we have to give everyone grace and try to get more people to the table and find that sweet spot to get along, because we really need them at the table. I think that there is a program we're really actively working on right now called A Million Rising. It's really not a million. It's a whole lot more than a million that we need at the table across the country. We actually think we need 3.5 million Americans or residents to step up and be speaking up. But more than anything, you need to be talking to your electeds. At this point, I think we really need to be talking. I'm astounded at how many people that I think are capable, accountable citizens, and you ask them, who's your state rep? And they don't know. They don't know who their state senator is. They don't know who their U.S. electeds are, how many we have, how that works. I think civics has failed in America, or at least I'm old enough to have gone through some civics classes. But please, I'm really grateful to have you here. I'm probably going to be pretty much in the weeds today about some specific things we need you to do or would urge you to do, and really grateful to have our electeds. At the county council, Rebecca was the one that stood up and was the most vocal, and incredibly appreciative. Thank you. And we didn't win at the council. There was extremely good community response, ACLU, Catholic Charities, a whole bunch of organizations, the Civil Rights Coalition, the Immigrant Rights Coalition, AFL-CIO, HGEA, Local 5, lots of good public support, but it wasn't enough, so we've got to keep working at it. And we really appreciate your strength. And the legislature was struggling this session, I think, both with maybe not enough information and not really necessarily aware of where the public's mindset's at. Would be my take, but that's me. But they also did some good things where they put a fair chunk of money into the budget. I'm sorry, I think she's telling me it's time. Okay, we'll talk later. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Kalamai. She was getting into specifics that we will get into, so I do thank her for that intro. So, speaking of which, we at the Hawai'i County League have put together some questions, and maybe you will have the answer, maybe you won't. If you have the answer, please raise your hand and you will get the microphone. Okay, that's our game today. So, do you have any quantitative or qualitative data you can share with our audience about immigrants being arrested in Hawai'i County? Does any of you have any qualitative data or quantitative data?
That's the hardest thing to get. But these guys might know the most.
Would you like to?
Yeah.
Couple minutes about qualitative data.
I don't have the exact numbers, but especially here in South Kona, our immigrant community has been hit pretty hard. One time, one day, they took over 20 people just from one farm. So it's been hit, and no civil rights. Just they're knocking down doors, just coming in. No warrants. No criminals, they're just taking anybody that looks brown. They're standing out there in front of Joy Smart, just stereotyping people. So, and Victoria could probably add more to that.
They began with child welfare checks, using that as a way to target minors that had crossed or sought asylum or have active asylum cases. And once they've approached these houses or these residencies where they have these addresses, they then question anyone that they really come into contact with. So they use that as really like their excuse to approach the house, and then whoever else is living in this house can be questioned as well. So I would say, as far as qualitative, people who have sought asylum were the first ones targeted, because they do have information on them, right? When they file for this. We have seen people from the origin of Honduras really being primarily right now. They have visited farms, but I would say that it's because of that. It's because of the residencies for these asylum cases. We have seen people targeted at work sites. So I believe it was the Hilton. Maybe they have some sort of information on one employee, and then they see anyone who might seem like they have undocumented status, racial profiling, and then they have followed them in cars, and actually pulled people over, which I don't believe they can do, but they have. They've gone to the house that Armando is talking about. They approached them at 5:30 in the morning, and they were there. They weren't letting people weren't leaving to school, to work. They left at like 11. They went and took lunch at a Mexican restaurant that was nearby, and stood in front of Choice Mart, just at the very front entry. And then those people thought that they had left, but then they were back later. So it was a full day of like harassing. And they didn't have the warrant that day. About a month after they returned with the warrant, and that's when they detained about 20 something people. Quantitative, the last me and Graciela counted, it was about 130, but there's been more. And so we are working on a system to keep track of who is detained, approached, actually deported or still in detention. We're trying to keep track of these people because a lot of their family members are not able to continue contacting them. They're scared to contact them. They make it really hard. You have to mail them the phone number that they're supposed to call from while they're detained. You can't call them. Their system takes about 3+ days to get these people's name, and if they have some sort of typo, it's really impossible to search for them in the system. So those have been the cases that we've seen. That's probably as much as I can give.
I'll add briefly to that, and just backing up as well. I think from what Victoria talked about, it started as essentially looking at specifically children who have sought asylum in our state and have a legal right to be here through that process. There is only essentially one attorney that handles all of those child cases for our state. They're based in Oahu. It's run through the Pacific Gateway Center. They are partially federally funded, and one of the things that we found is that in recent months, they had their funding pulled back by the federal government and revoked. They've been told that they've gotten it back, but they've also been told that they might not have it. So these are specific funding sources that I think are incredibly important, that we're continuing to track so that people can continue to have access to attorneys that they are rightfully owed. I think it's also important to talk about the fact that this is something that, under the guise of the Trump administration, has, I guess with right-wing media, or honestly media in general, they showed this as something that was about protecting children from child trafficking. So they used this as they used this whole guise as a way to protect children, when in reality all it was ripping children away literally and placing them on a plane to either California or Arizona, where there are facilities where they can detain children. Because in the state of Hawaii, we don't have a facility where they can detain a child. We've been told that these children were taken away for months in some cases.
How many kids do you think have been taken, people under 18?
The problem is we don't have a lot of those numbers. I was told that on that list, there was about 100 kids that are on that specific list for our state. The problem is a lot of that information is private. It's attorney-client privilege.
Are you aware that they reserved the Marine base in Oahu, or the Army base, but I think Marines reserved 125 beds for ICE?
The problem is that a lot of those beds cannot be used for children. So it's specifically about these children that are being detained and then separated from their families, even if they have all of the right things necessary. They have the documentation, they have from both the schools and the families and the second set of guardians, but they're still being detained and taken away. So I think that's just for framing the conversation, that's really important to understand and know. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's direct manipulation of documents that are intended and were originally filed by people following the law for immigration process. And, you know, I'm reading, unfortunately, more and more about the Trump administration utilizing documents like that to then gain access to people's personal and private information and then predating upon them based on that. And that's what's been happening here, all under the guise of health and wellness. And then there's no checkpoints. I mean, I remember the day being in council getting the calls when a 17-year-old Konawaina student was taken and his teachers in the night with the vice principal ran to the high school, got his legal documents, got everything together, ran to the police station, and were presenting everything that was necessary, making sure he had his cell phone, making sure he had, and were essentially disregarded, and he was taken anyway. And tracing him, tracking him, the amount of fear and pain. This boy was an honor roll student, set to graduate, had followed every protocol necessary, and was an incredible student. And the last I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, he'd gone to Oahu, and then they'd sent him to California, and then to Texas. And I'm not sure if he was then...
I don't know if he's back. I haven't followed up on that, but we were there. I was there, and there was an aunt and his brother who had already had his residency because he had won his asylum case, were stepping forward to try and say, we can take care of him. We can be his legal guardian. And like you said, the teacher and vice principal, they came down with the documents. It was 8 p.m. It was past 8 p.m. and we were waiting. They weren't allowing us to see him because we were not blood related. The ICE officers came out and they were, you know, the aunt was really desperate, kind of saying like, I can take him, right? And I'm a legal resident. Here's my green card. Here are photos of us, because they were questioning, who are you? I don't know who you are. How can you prove this? Do you guys have the same last name? What documents do you have? What about photos of like different life, over the past times? Because we can't just let a minor go, right? We're responsible for it. Yeah. And so we had a previous case where they didn't have all this documentation. And so we were like, okay, this time we're ready. We have people ready, their family members, all of this stuff. And so, yeah, it was really gross because we had everything and they still took this kid away. And they allowed them to say goodbye after the teachers, really, they made such a big difference. They were allowed to see him, just his brother and that aunt. But yeah, he was put into a car. They pulled him out through the back because they knew we were waiting and we were trying to figure out if they were going to take him. And so they pulled him out silently through the back, and then we just saw the car sped off. So, yeah, his 19-year-old brother was just there devastated. So these are the walls that we are confronted with when dealing with these cases. These people don't want to collaborate or to they don't want to. It's just about meeting their quotas, really.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when we first came to the United States, we crossed over into Arizona, And a few months later, both my parents, my mom was working at a tortilla factory and my dad was working construction. So they were both picked up, and there was 4 kids at that time, And I realized that we did break the law by, entering illegally, but that's the only way. There's no way for poor people like ourselves to get a visa or anything. You have to be well off, in order to get a visa. And both my parents were deported, and we were left at home, 4 of us, for 2 weeks. We went hungry, and I'm on my 50s now, and that still hurts, it scars you for the rest of your life, but that's why I'm here trying to help, but it's we're causing a lot of harm to these kids.
And I just want to point out, going back to history repeating itself, this is textbook Gestapo behavior. And right now, it's our Hispanic community and our immigrant population. But if you've been tracking anything that's happened in the last 6 months as a woman, my married name is now Villegas, of Spanish descent through Mexico, my husband's family. I also want to point out that most of the southern states used to be Mexico, just for the record, if we're going to look at history. So, but it puts us at a time and a place where this isn't about them. As women, we're watching our rights disappear. Right now, we're dealing with this specific issue, but I want to circle back to the statements made by Representative Capella, is that looking back at history, what worked? How did they overcome in World War II in all countries who have faced fascist authoritarian regimes? Because this is textbook behavior on their part. So how do we overcome? Look at the long game, get smarter, strategize, stand together, hold fast, show up. And what's being used now is this fear-mongering for funding, right? We're going to take your funding so you can't do your work. Well, I look around at a room of active volunteers, advocates, and activists, and for most of us, it's never been about funding. And so I call baloney on the fear-mongering for funding, because we're seeing where that funding's being allocated. People keep asking, how do ICE agents live with themselves and why would they take that job? They're now being offered 6 figures and signing bonuses and forgiveness for loans. And 18-year-olds, which, oh yeah, I would really want an 18-year-old fully armed going after people. No thank you. And as we're losing funding for FEMA and NOAA and women's health and everybody's health, anyway, the dystopian nightmare continues. But we do have hope, because the history of this place and the people here of diverse ethnic groupings is turning tragedy into opportunity for reconnection, realignment, recalibration, and regeneration. And I'm hopeful that today, through these connections, we can find a pathway towards that.
Thank you so much. Okay, that was lively. Next question is a little bit easier, hopefully. I don't know. This will probably be for our councilwoman again, but we want to make sure we have time for our audience questions. So briefly, could you please explain the memorandum of agreement between ICE and Hawai'i County?
A lot of questions have come forward about these MOUs between Hawai'i County and the FBI, HSI, which is Homeland Security, and Immigration's Customs Enforcement. I honestly didn't know this, I'll humbly admit that Homeland Security is essentially kind of the legislative, legal side, and ICE, Customs Enforcement, is the enforcement side. So it's important for us to understand that. One of my great concerns with these MOUs and the statements that we should just sign on because these agreements have been in place historically. They are what allow for collaborative work between the federal, state, and county governments. My statement was, well, this is a different federal government than we've ever been dealing with very different agendas. And it exposes our police department to being essentially forced into participating in something, number one, they never had the training for. They don't have the area of expertise. And from a mental health standpoint, essentially it forces them to stand and witness. And in witnessing something and not being able to intercede, it's forcing somebody to hold the legs of a victim, aiding and abetting. So there was the premise, the guys, once again, sign on to these MOUs. They need to be updated because they're old, and they, at the time, had featured the name of the old police chief. And so, as you all probably know, we now don't have the police chief that then they wanted to sign and whatnot. So I stand in firm opposition to these MOUs. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to convince other colleagues of mine, which I do hope have changed their mind as things more egregious have happened here. But these MOUs do exist. There were disclaimers about. They didn't include the 287, which requires or authorizes direct involvement from our police department, yada, 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 yada. It still, in legalese, opens the doors and provides the federal I.C.E. and HSI to utilize our police stations and the facilities there, and your common everyday person doesn't see I.C.E., HSI, police, DEA, or sheriff as like a different division, right? This is legalese to cover your ASS, that's not our jurisdiction, because we're just, this is where this is where my legal sphere and authority resides. Most people see that's the law. And if that law enforcement officer from that particular division isn't interceding to protect me, then they are in fact in alignment with this other division of law enforcement. And that is one of my greatest concerns, not only for our local police department, who I believe the vast majority's intention is to protect and serve every member of our community. So I just was given, I'll let her share the news, but I had thought the MOUs were signed by the administration and had moved forward, but I'm hearing some news that the mayor may not have signed them. I will say also, now with this transition in our police chief, I've been trying to work with a few people. Timing is key when working in the legislative branch and making sure the parts and pieces are aligned. And with the transition of the police chief, moving into having a new police chief, I am looking for, and I would love to call on the brilliant legal minds here, the appropriate terminology to create a legal document, another resolution to pass at council, which would revoke these MOUs. And if anybody would like to see the MOUs, I did print them out. You can also email them to me and I will share them with you. Yeah, more that know the specifics, the better.
I'll just make it really quick. There's MOUs in place still that were in place from 2015, 2017. So those are still in place. Understanding it was a different world, but they are in place. Then the county council, over Rebecca and several others' efforts, did approve renewing them, updating them. So that was the process. We understood or assumed that they had been executed. The now departing chief, about 3 weeks ago, when I asked him about the status of them, said, to his knowledge, they had not been executed by the mayor. And we've been trying to find out if that's, what the status is. Is that an administrative glitch or was it intentional? We don't know. ACLU has been trying to get a copy of all the documents. They did actually a public information request process, and so far the police department, they told them initially the police department's response was July 25th. There was no response, so they've asked again. So we are trying to get a update on where we are on these documents. We very much want to be asking the community to be speaking up at the police commission hearing, as we talk about what the criteria is for interviewing and choosing the next commission chief, asking very clearly where they stand on this MOU issue. But also, you all please be talking to your council members about MOUs, because there is a lot of, I think, intentional misunderstanding being shared about if you don't have them, then we don't get federal help with drug enforcement, with gun enforcement, with some of the other stuff that we want. I think many of us believe that we can live without the MOUs.
So we have about 15 more minutes. And I wanted to share some of our audience questions. We may not get to all of them, so we do apologize because of time. If you do have follow-up questions, we'll all be here till a little after 11, so you folks can follow up with our panel at that time. So is there currently a system for rapid notification of ICE action so people can show up to protest, or an organization that is planning something like text messages to people who can sign up? It would be like, I guess it would be like a notification system for, hey, there's a action going to be coming. So does anyone have?
I'm going to let another member of the Aloha Latinos group come up and share about the app that they have worked on for rapid response.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Tina Marie. Not only am I a member of the Aloha Latinos group, but I'm also a member of the steering committee for Kona Indivisible. I also work in the state party, too, as co-chair of the Women's Caucus, and I'm also assistant secretary of the Hawai'i County Democrats. So I have a lot of hats. Yes. What we're doing as far as rapid response on behalf of Aloha Latinos and Kona Indivisible is we are working on gathering names of everybody who wants to be involved in observing, documenting, reporting, staying in touch with your elected officials. And if you are interested to be part of that rapid response group, I suggest you come talk with me, with one of these folks, with one of these folks over here. Just raise your hand if you are willing to take names. That way we can gather everybody in a group, give you guys some protocols for being safe, being peaceful among everything, and that way we can work on a rapid response protocol. So
There's also an app that you can look up, and I'm not finding it now. I think it's I.C.E.'s one, and so there's ways to trigger notices that send out notifications to people who are also signed up for that, so you know where they are. Also, just as a side note, I've been sent by a number of different people a small image that says that ICE is going to be in Kona next week, staying at the King Kamehameha Kona Beach Hotel from the 14th to 16th. I'm still trying to track down where that came from, where the source was to validate and verify and then strategize. But whoever sent that out has courage. And so it's hard wherever they got that information, but I think it would benefit everybody in this room to know more and to validate the source and authenticity.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Councilmember. Okay. Thank you very much for that useful information. I do appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Okay, next question. Have they been using DACA registrations to harass people? Does anyone know? Yeah, I think so. DACA? Okay. Just wanted to make sure we got to all those questions. We did have a question about the King Kamehameha Hotel, so I'll just skip that one. This one is interesting. And I know that it's a little controversial, so it's a question from the audience. In World War II, citizens hid Jews, including children. Do we need to set up this system now to protect people from ICE?
It's already set up. I think it's already happening. Yes. Yes, and I know that there's already underground, just because we're in the frame of reference of the history associated with this comment, for providing food to families with children who have decided that their safest actions for the health and well-being of their family is to go into hiding. And so there are networks of people gathering food and supplies and helping to provide that to those families. So once again, history repeats itself, and we need to look to the heroes and sheroes of the eras that endured similar travesty as this, and emulate those practices for what works. And it can be simple. We all have a role to play.
I think I would also add that if you want to be a part of some of these networks, the best thing that you can do is open your pocketbook. Support some of the organizations that are already doing this work. I know that I've donated to organizations like Indivisible. I think it's important to donate to nonprofits like Aloha Latinos. To protect the integrity and the dignity of these families, I think it's also important to protect their safety. So maybe you're not the person to go and help deliver the food, but if you have the extra capacity to donate funds so that people can actually purchase the food and then bring it over, or if you have blankets, connect with organizations that are really the buffer for a lot of these families.
Another group that could use financial help is ACLU. There are only 18 attorneys, no, I'm sorry, it's 15. 15 attorneys that have been identified across the state of Hawaii who are experienced in immigration processing and the whole process, who are actually willing and able to do it pro bono. We need help with that. ACLU could really use the help as well. Thank you. Sorry.
And just to exemplify the open-minded, open-hearted nature of Aloha Latinos embraced by the LGBTQ community, hosted, and I was so grateful to be able to attend drag bingo at my bar. And so talk about an opportunity for people who are too often underserved and under attack to join together and raise funds and resources for Aloha Latinos. And I just want to commend you on that, and thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to participate.
Thank you so much. We're almost to the end, but I'm going to ask, what makes Hawaii different when it comes to immigration enforcement? What makes Hawaii, the Aloha state, different? And how can we be different? Patty, you want to start? Wow. you can start us off.
I guess I don't know what to say other than this isn't who we are. We are all immigrants, which I can't kind of get over. But there's honestly nobody here, including our Native Hawaiian community at some point, that weren't immigrants to this place. And the respect we should and do have for diversity is, again, that's who we are. I'm not sure if that really answers the question.
Everyone can try.
You know, we have the federal constitution and we have the state constitution. And the words, the wisdom, the ideals, and the responsibility of each and every one of us to abide by the Hawaii Constitution, in my mind, at least at this point, under some of the travesties of the federal government, literally trumps that. Because that is a moral code, it is an ethical code, it is an ethos, and it is rooted and grounded. Unfortunately, even the history of this state is fraught with tragedy, injustice, disparity, displacement of the host culture and peoples. But as we must stand together now, I think that returning to that wisdom of our host culture is where the solutions reside for us as a society, a global community, indigenous peoples of diverse ethnic backgrounds, to stand side by side, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, and not let anyone be taken.
Now, how do I follow that? Hawaii is different. we're also different because we're separated from the continent of the United States. And I think that that's an important factor to bring into this conversation as well. We know what's coming. We've also been in this position before. This is harder than the last time, but we also know and we understand, and we now have a little bit more of the tools that are starting to come together. I don't know where I'm going to be able to say this, so I'm going to say it in this response because I don't know how much more time we have. The GDP of Hawaii is about $1.6 billion. The amount of funding that's being given to ICE and HSI to handle immigration and customs enforcement is over $160 billion. That's 10 times the GDP of the state of Hawaii, everything that we produce. That is insane. And as council member talked about, it's disproportionate. This is money that's being taken away from our education system, from our healthcare system, and it's really putting, I think, pressure on our judicial system. So I think the difference with Hawaii is that we know what it's like to stand up when things get hard. We've had union members who have stood up in the very beginning when they fought for the initial things like a 5-day work week and vacation time and weekends. So we in Hawaii have a core in our Democratic Party, in the core of our people, about fighting for what's right and for what's moral and just. We know what kind of money is coming in. But I think we also know, and we have to find the courage within ourselves, to call on the governor to take a stand on immigration. It's not just up to our counties to have MOUs in place. It's time for an executive order that is going to fight for the benefit of our entire state, to protect our local police departments and also to protect our communities. So I think that's the difference, is finding that courage in ourselves and continuing that aloha forever.
I'll keep it short and sweet because you guys did so much. Yeah, I mean, I was raised here, so I have a profound, great gratitude for this place. This place taught me that duality and culturally is possible, and that it's not a threat, that it's not something to be ashamed of. Hawaii has taught me to celebrate both my origin culture and the culture here. I mean, I was dancing hula in fourth grade and learning all of those things. And so I think that Hawaii stands to be a model for embracing the differences that we have and that they can be celebrated. Today, this country really, or the government, the administration today wants us to assimilate into one thing. And I think that's very boring. So I would just say that that's something that Hawaii has taught me and that I always go back to. We can celebrate our differences, we can celebrate our culture, and that makes us Hawaii, really, this cultural melting pot, right? So, yeah, thank you.
What makes Hawaii special is family. You know, a lot of us people here are family oriented, and it's part of our culture too. You know, family comes first, and like a lot of us, you know, we're transplants from other places, and you know, this is we want to have like a slower life here. You know, more peace. You know, we come from other states, you know, where life is fast, and I think a lot of us here, you know, we just want to enjoy our years and, you know, smell the plumerias and you know, us immigrants, you know, we want to, you know, we want a chance. You know, if you love Kona coffee, you know, about 90% of us are the ones that are doing the labor out there. So, and you know, we want to do your landscaping. You know, we want to do construction. So, you know, we're here to work. You know, we just want to be given a chance. And you know, like myself, I'm here. You know, I have a bad knee from the Army, and I can't run anymore. You know, I got tired running from I.C.E and other states. So, and thanks again for all your help and you know, all your kind hearts, and you know, we appreciate you. Thank you.
I want to thank you all. We're at the 11 o'clock mark, and for Naleo, we have a 1 hour block that they're going to put on public television, local public television. That's very important for us today, because if not, we'll never get this on the 6 o'clock news. So anybody that does not support public television, I would say, please do. Because if you're here, then we want you to know how important it is for your voice to be heard. Even if you don't agree with the things that we have to say, we want to make sure that you know that we're here for you. If you want to speak to any one of our panel members after and you have something to say, we welcome that. And I want to say for myself why Hawaii is different. Because we have a law, and it's called the Aloha Spirit Law. And I'm going to read it to you because I think that maybe some of our leaders have missed it. Okay? So in Hawaii, we are different because we are run by the Aloha Spirit. HRS 5-7.5. Aloha Spirit is a coordination of mind and heart within each person. It brings each person to the self. Each person must think and emote good feelings to others. In the contemplation and presence of the life force, aloha, the following unuhi laulaloa may be used. Akahai, meaning kindness to be expressed with tenderness. Lokahi, meaning unity to be expressed with harmony. Olu olu, meaning agreeable to be expressed with pleasantness. Ha'aha'a, meaning humility to be expressed with modesty. And ahunui, meaning patience to be expressed with perseverance. These are traits of character that express the charm, warmth, and sincerity of Hawaii's people. It was the working philosophy of Native Hawaiians and was presented as a gift to the people of Hawaii. Aloha is more than a word of greeting or farewell or salutation. Aloha means mutual regard and affection and extends warmth in caring with no obligation in return. Aloha is the essence of relationships in which each person is important to every other person for collective existence. Aloha means to hear what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable. In exercising their power on behalf of the people and in fulfillment of their responsibilities, obligations, and service to the people, the legislature, the governor, and the lieutenant governor, executive offices of each department, the Chief Justice, Associate Justices, and judges of the appellate, circuit, and district courts may contemplate and reside with the life force and give consideration to the Aloha Spirit. And that is the law. So, with all of the actions taken on Hawaiian soil, I would remind anyone here from any government entity that we are the land of aloha. It is enshrined in our law. And if you also look, we also have a law called the Law of the Splintered Paddle that allows those who are vulnerable to be able to be on the roadside without being harmed by the government. Look these laws up because we are not the same as on the mainland. Hawaii is different. We have brought our experts here and our leaders here and our immigrant community here to show that we are here in Aloha. Whether we agree or disagree, we are all immigrants, as they say. Hawaiian people came here from Tahiti and other places. We were the first people here, but then others came from America, from Great Britain, from Japan, from the Philippines, from Portugal, from Spain. These are my ancestors, all of them. So immigration in Hawaii is a different story. And so we urge everyone to continue the conversation in aloha, because that's where we are, the land of aloha. And if anybody sees anyone violating this law of aloha, it is within your right to remind them of where they are. Thank you very much for joining us here today.